Hey Kevin, how's it going?
Uh, Doing well. How are you?
Good to see you. I'm
Yeah,
well. Happy to be doing this project with you.
yeah,
We've had a long relationship of biblical conversations and whatnot. We're kind of, I don't know if this is formalizing it or not, but a
no,
casual formalization maybe. So that we're
right,
actually going
right.
to put this down on a YouTube video. So yeah,
Just like our conversations at Java Central.
that's right.
Yeah,
Delicious
yeah,
Westerville coffee.
yeah. Just came back from church, and I've been going to. I think I mentioned this to you before. Going to a Mennonite church, Columbus
Oh
Mennonite Church,
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, very cool.
and and I was, we've been, my wife and I, our family's been attending kind of off and on for kind of since the new year, I would say. So about six
Hmm.
months,
Hmm.
5 6 months, and kind of really wanted to get involved in a community that was more social justice oriented,
Right.
and which is awesome. But one thing that surprised me, I just came back from kind of a Bible study after service, and just how academic they are.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it,
yeah.
and the pastor was leading it, and the first thing he said, like it was kind of a topic of how the Bible views kingship and government, and he kind of started out. He says in the Bible there's no univocal voice just about it in
Nice.
everything,
Yeah. Agreed.
which for me that's like, yeah, I mean, for me that's something that I've been discovering,
Yeah.
and when we dig into this book, we'll probably talk about it more too. Um,
Yes, for sure.
and yeah, and I mentioned it to him after the study, and he was just like, "Yeah, it can be threatening to a lot of people.
It
You
is
know,
very much. Yeah.
people want to think the Bible is like, oh, it's very clear. If you read it, one interpretation, it's very
Biblical
obvious."
liberalism.
Yeah, and there was also like another guy. He was just visiting. He was a Mennonite from. He was just visiting family, and he has PhD from Marquette in theology, and
Mhm.
he's a professor. And
Yeah.
so it was just a great conversation, very intellectual, but yet like relevant, mm,
Yeah.
applicable. Like it was just, you think of the Mennonites, you think of like, kind of like a liberal Amish, kind
Yeah.
of, you know,
Right.
just nice people, nice community, but you, I don't think, at least I didn't think about them being like so like socially active in
Hmm.
social justice,
Yeah.
affirming, welcoming, and affirming, and then and to top it all off, I mean, the pastor and I we talked about David Bentley Hart, and I was like, wow,
Well,
you read that David Bentley? We read one book together,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it was
One of
hard.
my
It's
favorite
hard.
theologians. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
it's hard. Like
Yeah.
it's a hard book for me to read. But
Yeah.
he was just saying the pastor really enjoys that author. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, me too.
I
Very
was
cool.
pleasantly surprised. Kind of,
Yeah.
it was a need that I felt is met kind of just by listening to podcasts and meeting with friends like yourself. But I didn't expect it like at a church as much,
Yeah.
But it's kind of
Yeah.
pleasantly surprised. So yeah,
Yeah, the problem has perpetually been with those more, I don't know, intellectually curious churches is getting a congregation together. But I was surprised to find out that you actually have a decent sized congregation there. There's not a
yeah,
lot of people
yeah,
that don't go to church to either be affirmed in their bigotry or to just get their, I don't know, ideas about things affirmed in one way or another in a very clear black and white kind of way. There's
yeah,
that sort of enjoyment of certainty at a lot of churches. I'm overplaying this. Sorry, I don't mean
right.
to say.
Oh
I said
yeah,
most, but anyways, the probably not most, but
yeah,
whatever. The larger congregations tend to be places where you go to get told,
right.
the clear answer on things and
Yeah,
whatever. That's very attractive to most people. So yeah, getting together a congregation of people that are like-minded in that regard.
Yeah.
The other thing that can sometimes happen with more of the lefty churches is they get their own sort of orthodoxy,
Hmm.
like tests about who's in, who's out, very black and white. This is the enemy, this isn't. And so then you can fall into that. I've, had to leave
Yeah.
lefty leaning churches because of that before, where it was just very exclusionary, just in the opposite direction. So it's kind of cool that
Yeah.
you found a place that doesn't seem to have either one of those problems.
It doesn't seem like it, and it's cool to see like there's young families, and there's a lot of older people too. Um, it's just a mix of generational ages, and um, yeah, it's close to Ohio State, so it seems like it gets a lot of like PhD like graduates and stuff.
Oh yeah,
Like a
cool.
lot of
Yeah,
a lot of smart people, like, but they're very active and just in things. So yeah, it's been good. It's been a good experience. So I'm excited. So I thought
awesome.
I just might share that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're here today to talk about hell, Kevin,
Oh,
and
wonderful.
and our lifelong fear of it. No, just
Yeah.
kidding. But
We're excited.
no, so the book we're doing is called Heaven and Hell by Bart D. Ehrman, a scholar that both of us enjoy. I've known about him for a long time. So I should mention, just in case anybody's listening who doesn't know, I do have a background in theology and religious studies and history of religion. So I have heard of a lot of these scholars and whatnot. And Ehrman is very and has been for a long time an important scholar in my life. And
Yeah.
he is a little bit different than you or I in the sense that he is more on the uh, agnostic, leaning toward atheist side. He has this kind of a stance where he can't be, you know, uphold true atheism in the sense that that's another kind of certainty that he's not willing to swear to or whatever. But like, he's kind of non-practicing and that kind of a thing. But you and me continue to be people of faith, I guess I could say. Describe we're not anti-religious, and so which brings me to another kind of fun thing that I decided to do with the podcast here. I changed the idea from a deconstruction, which is so popular right now, to a recovery, so that neither one of us were ever going to go through. I don't think this total like deconstruction, like taking apart the faith to the point where we became non-believers or something like that. So I don't know. There's probably better ways to describe the difference, but like that's why we're in recovery, and in this podcast specifically, we are in recovery from eternal conscious torment. So like we are remaining people of faith, but without all that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
why don't we start? I'll pass it to you, Kevin. Again, like, what is your experience growing up? What were you taught about hell, and how did it affect your life? And just like even to all the way up to kind of like where you're at with it now, maybe a little bit
Yeah.
as well. I mean, just whatever you feel like sharing would be great.
Yeah. I guess you can say I pretty much grew up Catholic. Went to Catholic school up until the 8th grade. And I don't really remember being taught much about hell, but I kind of picked it up, I guess, just through our culture,
Yeah.
like bad people go to hell kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and hell is forever. And hell is just incredible torment. And just imagine
Unimaginable.
your worst day multiplied by a trillion, whatever. And it was something that affected me. And I always say it's kind of like it was a great behavior management tool, like because
As
I,
intended. Yeah.
I as attended, and I took it really. Yeah, I mean, I was fearful of hell going there, and
Yeah.
I know being introspective a little bit, just knowing that I have bad thoughts and I do some bad
Yes.
things, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm
I
going to
love
hell,
that. Yeah. Yeah.
and so yeah, that was something I really feared. And then in college, I got involved in um, an organization called Athletes in Action, which is kind of like the athletic ministry wing of Campus Crusade for Christ. And one of the leaders um, kind of had a bunch of us over to his apartment or whatever, and he asked the question that I'm sure you've heard, like, if you were to die
Yeah.
today, kind of where would you be? Would you be in heaven or hell? And I just remember I couldn't answer that because I thought like I'd probably be in hell. Like I feared death. I mean, I was like, I
Yeah.
did not
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
to die.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I couldn't answer it. I just said, I don't know. I
Yeah.
couldn't say seven. I couldn't say like 7 out of 10 or whatever.
Right there, I got a live one on the hook
Yeah,
right here. Yeah,
that
I'm
was
gonna
a
reel this one
good
in for sure.
I was a good Calvinist. That was total depravity,
Yeah, yeah,
basically.
yeah,
And but then he shared about like, he shared that he was certain, and he was certain because of Christ's death, and the idea of penal substitution, and how he suffered for my sake, and I can be forgiven. I
yeah,
thought, wow, that's awesome. Like, sure. And so
yeah.
that was like you said, I was like ripe for the picking, I guess, or whatever.
Yes, sir.
And 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 so I kind of said that prayer later on that semester, and I can kind of relate to Bart Ehrman when he became a born again Christian, that
Hmm.
he felt like he wanted to convert everybody, and he
Yeah,
was
yeah,
he was obnoxious about it,
yeah.
and I was pretty, every opportunity I got, I would share. I remember, when I'm an educator, I'm a teacher, so we took education classes, and it's a little, I think it's probably a little more relational than more academic
Hmm.
focused majors.
Yeah.
And so they would say like, hey, the teacher or professor would say, share about yourself. You go around and you share what your name is. Of course, I thought that was an opportunity to share the gospel. So
Oh,
every time, my
God.
name is Kevin
Nice,
Smith, and most significant, I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior.
nice.
That, but
Woo.
I knew I was a sin. Yeah,
Yeah,
I felt good. I felt excited to share with my mentors and my Bible study leaders
yeah,
how faithful I was.
yeah, yeah.
Um, well, but generally though, like, I really thought if you did not have the right belief systems
That's right.
in the 4 points of the, the gospel track of
Yeah,
or spiritual laws, that you're going to hell.
yeah.
And so, like, in my mind, that's the most loving thing I could do, is say, you're going to hell, and you need to believe this, this, and that.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and so I kind of believed that for through college, and wanted to get in some sort of ministry, and I would travel overseas and got involved in ministry that was evangelistically focused like that. Um, boy, and then I would say probably the first time I started to question it was I read a book called "Good News About Injustice" by Gary Hagen, and he's a founder of International Justice Mission, and the book was about girls being trafficked, basically, and just that corruption, and just what that was like. And and he's part of an organization that tries to you know convict the people that are doing this, or that are
Yeah,
trafficking these girls. And great organization. um but but I just remember thinking, I'm like, there are stories of like 6-year-old girls
mm,
experiencing horrific things being done to them, and they have no family. They
yeah,
maybe were orphaned or were stripped away from their families in some way, and then they grow up, and then, like, once they're old enough, they're not as desirable, and so they are just kind of cast off into the street. And and then, of course, they have no education and no sort of network that could help them get a job, and so they go into that profession,
mm,
and often they die of whatever, right?
yeah,
At a young age. And I thought, like, well, they've never heard the gospel. Are they going to hell? I mean, like, it's like,
I know. Yeah.
I mean, really? Like,
Outrageous. Yep.
literally experiencing torture, like
Hmm.
hell on earth. And just because they were never heard of the four spiritual laws, they're going to spend eternity in conscious torment, And so that book definitely made me question that
Yeah.
idea. Um,
There are some guys who preach that who will like back off if like there's people that have actually never heard the gospel. They'll like make some
yeah,
exception. It's kind of funny,
right.
but like usually they'll be like, well, but they might have heard about like as if like there was ever any free choice about any of it. Like, but
Yeah,
they may have heard somebody, you don't know, talking about Jesus. It's almost like if you're one of the ones out there preaching, like being saved or whatever, or born again or whatever, like you, because they didn't like accept what you were saying, that was their chance, and now it justifies that they're burning in hell or something like that. And
yeah,
as Ehrman talks about, and as the thing that just gets me, looking at religious studies, kind of like just demographics. Guess what, guys? You are the religion of the family you were born into,
yeah,
almost without exception. There are stories of conversions and whatnot. I remember these conversations. Well, what about Muslims or whatever? It's like, well, they most of them have heard the gospel of Jesus or whatever. It's like they stay Muslims because they were born Muslims. When like
yeah,
we stay Christians because we're born Christians, whatever. Like it's not.
yeah,
Yes, there are some amazing stories, and it's crazy to me that like there's a couple famous stories that get told about Muslims who converted to Christianity even nowadays, and they're told almost as like, see, like they're responsible for their own salvation, and
yeah,
it's kind of crazy. It's not a
yeah,
celebration or really anything. It's just kind of like proof that like they had a chance and they deserve
yeah,
whatever they're going to get. There's this just crazy desire to, I don't know, to show
yeah.
that like we're right or whatever.
And and the idea of like having to have a certain beliefs on certain things
Ah,
will determine your eternity.
yeah. Did
Like,
not come from Jesus, guys. That was not what Jesus
yeah,
taught.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. So, gosh, I'm trying to think. And I've always, one thing about the background that I have, kind of more evangelical Bible believing churches, right?
Yeah,
It's just importance of reading the Bible, and that's some of the habit that I just have. I just
it's a good
I
point.
read I read through the Bible every year. That's just kind of became a habit, to be honest. And just as I've read through it, and I'm like, I kind of started to believe in like a nihilism. That there were some things in the New Testament, just the idea of just like the second death. It's like, well, you
Right.
just kind of cease to exist,
Yeah.
and that seemed more compassionate to me, more so. And I talked to my wife a couple weeks ago about this, just about the conversation we're going to have, and that we're having now. Um, there's like kind of viewpoints of eternal conscious torment. Then you have like annihilism, and then you have universalism. I know that's very simplistic, and there's more to that. But and I explained annihilism, and she said, it's like I like annihilism. Like, it's a little more compassionate. That's what she said. And but then she said, like, but there's certain people that you want to kind of suffer for, like
Yeah. Yeah.
The Jeffrey
Yeah.
Epstein
Right.
of the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you don't. I think if you talk to anybody, most people would like to see him suffer
Yeah.
at least a little bit. Like
Yeah.
just what he did, and I think that kind of. I know we're now getting into the book more, when they talk about like the in the human mind, the development of the idea of justice. Like,
Yeah.
wait a second, we all live and then we die and we go to Sheol, which is like the grave. Like, that doesn't seem right. Like, there's some really good people that should probably get some more awards. They sacrificed,
That's right. Yeah.
some things. They've done
Yeah.
really some good things, but there's some really evil people, like the early church when they were persecuted. Like, if someone is like torturing me, like I would kind of like to see them punished and not just to be annihilated. So I think, anyways, kind of getting into the book more, but it just seems to be like the idea of justice kind of made heaven and
Absolutely.
hell
Yeah.
something that's attractive for people.
That's right. Yeah. I
Um,
wanted to just interject real quick that you made a point early on. I just wanted to highlight that it is very clear from modern biblical scholarship that isn't biased and idiotic that there is no unified, idea. That a lot of
yeah,
what the Bible is a development of ideas, all ideas of
mhm,
all kinds, and one of the ideas that's developed throughout the Bible but never resolved in the Bible
yeah,
is the idea of an afterlife. So Sheol is a nice
yeah,
example of something that was just kind of like like we don't even really know what happens. It's just kind of like this imagining a very like subdued existence, almost lifeless life or something, afterlife or whatever. Just based on you know not knowing pretty much,
yeah,
and then interacting with other cultures over time. So Ehrman does a good job of outlining this in the book, with the Greek culture. Oh, before that, with the Babylonian captivity, and just like learning about other people's ideas about afterlife really affected Jewish notions of the afterlife as well, but never in any one unified way. And so a lot of times that people think are about resurrection. Like, because another option is this bodily resurrection piece, however you put that in there, that in Ehrman goes into try to, uncover how that came into being, because that was not an original teaching or whatever. One
mhm,
of the things I just want to emphasize is that in doing biblical scholarship and the kind of faith journey that we're on, at any rate, you cannot uncover like the answer. So like the way that Revelation seems to work in this version is not like, here are the correct teachings, this is what to believe, here it is, like very
yeah,
clear tract of some kind. The way Revelation works for I'll just speak for myself on this one. I don't want to speak for you. Is like, it is something that is handed in some degree. I do believe in revelation. I do believe in the Word of God and God speaking, but it's still spoken to human beings in human language, in history, in a particular place, in a particular time, and so it's very much along the lines of what Paul says in that Corinthians, I think it's 1 Corinthians 13 towards the end, where he says, like, through a glass darkly, like, or through a mirror darkly, or something like that, something we cannot see, but like, like, so that's how revelation happens. It happens through through this process, and like we learn more, but we never, at least while we're here, where it's always through a glass darkly, we're always trying to learn. So to go out there and then tell somebody this is a very clear, biblically literal, if you just read the Bible you'll see there's no controversy, this is the thing you got to do, and otherwise you're going to hell, is just very disingenuous and very harmful, and harmed both of us. And so, we had to figure it out, pretty
yeah,
much on our own, because they're not people that are teaching you how to stay a person of faith, but deepen that faith in a direction that isn't about clear answers, in a direction that
yeah,
for me is about uncertainty. But like, it is that ground of uncertainty that for me is what allows for more of the sort of love that Jesus preached about to become manifest in us, in our communities, because it is profoundly unloving to tell people this black and white message that is simply not the case, and it's not biblically
yeah,
accurate. And so it just brings me to the second point very quick. I wanted to co-sign on with you that most people who believe that stuff don't actually read the Bible. Most biblical literalists, people who proclaim biblical literalism, do not read the Bible. And so it's very easy to be a biblical literalist when you don't read the Bible, but
yes,
so or follow any of the developments and earnest scholarship. Biblical scholars
right,
are not evil Satan worshipers trying to destroy your faith. They are people who offer
yeah,
us, including people like Bart Ehrman, who has been the target of a lot of rancor. He is somebody who has helped both Kevin and I with our journey, and others as well. So,
yeah,
hand it
yeah,
back to you, sir. Sorry for the
yeah.
interruption.
So, gosh, where am I at now? I'm still on the journey of what it's like in the
Yeah.
afterlife, but um, it just seems to me, just reading through the Bible, is that when God interacts with his people, he tends to surprise them sometimes, right? Like,
Yeah.
particularly kind of like the New Testament, like just the Messiah and what was expected.
Nice.
You know, it seems like the Jews of the time expected some powerful kind of ruler, not someone from rural Judea, or um, that that spoke like him. And just other passages about. Well, actually, Bart Ehrman mentioned a few of them. I did star them in my notes here.
Cool. I just want to, while you're
Uh,
finding them, I just want to
yeah,
interrupt real quick because that is actually my favorite passage, Jesus being tested out in the desert, where basically Satan offers to Jesus the kind of messiahship that was expected. So he's just like, I'll give you all the, kingdoms of the world. You just take power, come into your
yeah,
power, and make all of the corrections and make everything right. He's actually appealing to his desire for justice and for the people's desire for justice. Put things right,
mm, yeah,
and in
yeah,
this very black and white way. And as you said, this is my favorite example of Jesus having to reinterpret things, and not just
mm,
taking the interpretation. And this is the importance of interpretation. So saying like that's not the kind of Messiah, the kind of Messiah, like even admitting that the sort of Messiah that was prophesied is not what I am. And I come in weakness instead of in power. So I'm
yeah,
reinterpreting what it means. Part of what happens, in this understanding of Jesus is that he may be the Son of God in all kinds of different ways and senses, but he no longer has the omniscience of God because he's emptied himself into the form of a servant. And so like he has to figure things out too. And so one of the things he's figuring out is what his mission is. And so he is
yeah,
um, figuring out that that is not what I am. And so he's having to reinterpret what people thought.
yeah,
And so, and I think that we should do likewise if we're going to follow Jesus, that we should constantly be reinterpreting, what we understand from the Bible, the teachings that we've been given for today. And the key to that interpretation, Jesus shows us in the testing in the desert, is love. It's like I interpret this
yeah,
according to what has the most loving outcome, and me taking power would just turn into like more corruption, would take away, ultimately, in some
yeah.
sense, if it really was total power, would be to take away everybody else's part in it in any of this.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so, so there's just a great call in what you were bringing up, Jesus having to reinterpret. And there's a lot of biblical scholars that'll tell you that the passages that Jesus does interpret, he doesn't interpret according to what at least
Right,
Jews at the time were interpreting it. He would have been a bad, biblical scholar, but like this is
right.
what this is what we do. We reinterpret things, but not just however we want, according to the law of love that Jesus taught us to interpret, uh, not just scripture, but
Yeah,
everything by. So
yeah,
with that, anyways,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's a passage in Romans 5:18. That's condemnation came to all people through the transgression of one person, which is Adam. So to the righteousness that leads to life comes to all people through the righteous act of one person. And just other passages as well, and even like Matthew 25, where Jesus says, "If you did not do this to the least of these, um, you're in danger of hell," basically, right? I'm just like,
Well,
wow.
you're a goat, right? You're separated out.
Yeah, I'm a goat. I'm not a sheep. I'm goat. I'm like I'm an American. Like just for being an American,
Yeah, right.
like the technology that everything we have, I feel like has a lot to do with the the um the suffering of the most vulnerable in the world,
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
and I'm just like, I'm in trouble. We're all in trouble.
Yeah.
Um So,
And there have been plenty of times in a very simple way when I saw him, you know, interpreted in this way. When I saw, when did you see me? If he ever asked me, like, and he does, like, did you give me food when I was hungry? Did you
yeah,
clothe me when I was naked? No, I didn't.
no, no.
So yeah.
That's
So, and
powerful. It's funny how Bart Ehrman, he got into like what Jesus actually said in that debate, you know, and he did mention that that passage is for certain Jesus said that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that's something I don't know much about as far as like
Yeah, so he's talking
the
about like
gospel. Yeah,
a seminar that was put together among scholars where they have a set of historical critical
yeah,
like criteria that like basically try to line up what's in the gospel accounts, what's in Paul, and try to figure out like what was added, what was original, or like what was like kind of had the spirit of being original according to a certain set of criteria. And the way that gets in is that that does seem to fit with what else, the other things we already know about Jesus's ministry, in terms of like his ministry was to the weak, to the poor,
yeah,
to the outcast, whatever, to the other. And so that's why it has that. But he also talks about how the passage is not really about. This is a good moment with the Paul passage as well, because the Paul passage especially gets used, for the people who are out there with their 4 point, thing or
hmm
whatever. That Paul passage is the one used the most. I think we should pause on both of those just for a second, so that with the idea here of the sheep and the goat. So Ehrman makes the point that this is not supposed to be a theological uh, treatise. This is not about like heaven and hell per se. It is. It is.
yeah,
It is about a principle that Jesus is trying to. It's about a criteria how you decide what to do in your life or not to do in your life. And so it is, and it's in line with a greater shift that Jesus was a part of, because he had some parts of his ministry that were very Pharisaic in nature, and they had already made this shift like away from to some degree ritual impurity towards moral impurity. And so you have in the prophets, I know this is one of the ones that you love to bring up all the time, and I forget which prophets, but it's in most of them, some version of God doesn't want your sacrifice. The
mm,
smell of it smells like crap to his nostrils, like, or whatever, because you don't treat the poor well or whatever. Like that's that it ruins everything else. So it's like, it's like the most important thing to God, not anything else, is how you treat people. And then there's some version, like at least two of the prophets, where it's like, the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah wasn't, like all the things that we think. It's that they didn't welcome the stranger.
yeah,
They mistreated the stranger. So there's
yeah,
this kind of shift in interpretation going on, where it's more on the moral side. And this teaching, and one of the reasons why I think it's authentic, is that Jesus preached that kind of a switch. So it's maybe a progression more than a switch, but it's like, no, what God cares about and what he's teaching you, who is a sheep and who is a goat, is about how you treated people. And it's
yeah,
about, how you welcomed the stranger or whatever. And then people take this and want to make it some kind of theological teaching about hell. But it's like, really, it doesn't have anything to do with that. I can see how you can take it
yeah,
that way if you were like particularly interested in finding passages about hell.
yeah,
But what's totally fascinating about this one, using this one, is that the criteria isn't the 4 point whatever thing. The criteria isn't anything particular that you believe.
yeah.
It's how you treated people.
Yep.
Under
And
so,
yeah,
anyways, yeah.
and
Anyway.
as a recovering literalist, I guess I was probably reading it as a literalist. Like, if this is true, like, I'm in deep trouble, and other passages like, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to me but, through me. No one comes to the Father but through me. And that's a verse that people use as like exclusively through Christ, right? And I'm like, well, it could mean like, yeah, it is through Christ, but does that mean you have to like believe in these four things and say this and say that and say the prayer? Or is this at the time I kind of would hold to penal substitution, atonement. And, okay, well that why can't this atonement be applied to everyone? You know, because we already apply it to those under the age of accountability, quote unquote. We apply it to those that maybe are cognitively disabled. Many of us evangelicals apply it to those that have never heard. Um, so why can't you apply it to everyone? If you
Yeah,
can, because it's not just through faith, apparently. Why
yeah.
can't you just apply it to everyone? Um, so yeah, I think the idea of like a Christ-centered universalism is what became probable in my mind. Um, so as
Especially
far as my
since that, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kevin.
just as far
Go.
as my journey goes, like I really don't know, to be honest,
Yeah, well, I think
where
which
I'm
is
at.
the best place to
Yeah,
be if you actually read the Bible, because the Bible
yeah,
doesn't have a clear teaching on it, and I think
yeah.
that's pretty interesting that it doesn't. But the way and the truth of life thing, the way Ehrman holds that is like this is sort of like John's idea. John is a later gospel. John, has a very high Christology. So I don't take it. I don't take it that way. But you don't see it in the other gospels quite so much. But I don't. I
Mhm.
don't take it that way at all. I take it very much as in. Christ identifies himself with the God of love. That's who he's saying he is.
Yeah,
And so, like, when what that means, especially looking back at the sheep and the goat passage, is like, you know me when you love, and like that is the way. So when I am the way,
mhm,
it means the way is through love. So it's like it's not an exclusivist thing because we all have access truly to loving action and stuff like that, and we can,
yeah,
that's a part of our you know array of choices in any given situation. We may not choose
yeah,
it, but like to me there's no exclusivism in it, because that,
right,
yeah, I am a universalist also, and I do think that love's going to get you. We are kind of lured to it now, and we can say no to it, but I do think that that is where we come from in the end, and
right.
the return is inevitable. So um, I take that one a little bit differently than Ehrman does, for sure. But the Paul one is interesting too, because do you mind reading that real quickly again,
Oh, you mean
Kevin?
in
Because that's a
Romans?
real important one. Yeah, right. The Romans one.
Yeah, as condemnation came to all people through the transgression of one person, so too the righteousness that leads to life comes to all people through the righteous act of one person.
Right. So we're talking about kind of, is that usually associated with substitutionary atonement, or what is that? What
Probably,
is
yeah, yeah. I would say that would
sometimes?
be,
Yeah, sometimes I don't know how those all get applied, but yeah.
yeah,
So anyway, if you read all of Paul, including Deutero Paul, or however you want to, apocryphal Paul, whatever, like you're going to see a development of theology, and you're going to see Paul having had a direct, and I believe this, having had a direct experience of God, having had some revelation, but you're going to see that he does not, even if you're just in, like original Paul or whatever you want to call those letters, you're going to see a development, not a clear answer about it, but you're going to see an example of how to do good theology, as far as I'm concerned, which is to like have this sort of developmental approach, which is like where you are constantly trying to understand what's been revealed to you, because it's not revealed in like uh, an equivocal way. It's always revealed in this sort of like multivalent way in which you can continue to try to one of the things that, like, one of my favorite mystics and theologians, Meister Eckhart, used to say is that as God reveals, he hides. And so, like, there's always more to the revelation than you can get at in just one pass. So you're always having to
yeah,
develop, change, tweak uh, in relation to, your place in the world, your culture, all those kind of things. And so that, there are pluses and minuses, but for us to like say like this is like somehow clear theologically, so that this means that only through the four, movements or of the track that you're going to be saved, and then that's the only way in, and that Paul was clear on this. It's just not true. Read Paul again. If you're a biblical literalist, actually read Paul and see that
Yeah.
he is not clear on that he develops this throughout, and
Yeah.
that's not even clear in that one passage that it means what a lot of people think it means.
Right. Right. And even I remember reading in the book about Origin how he's
Oh,
known as
good
being a
call. Yeah,
universalist.
yeah,
And then, like he said, like in one state of his career, Origin believed in reincarnation.
yeah.
So it was just, yeah. I mean, if you're a thinker and you write things down, like you're going to change over the years and what your
And Paul
thinking is.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, you see it.
And
Yeah,
Jesus did too. Like there are
right.
famous things where Jesus seems to teach things that at least didn't happen, and there's all kinds of different ways to interpret it, I realize, but notice it's not literal. You have to interpret it. So when Jesus is talking about this generation isn't going to pass away until you see me coming in glory and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
people reinterpret it, but it did
yeah,
literally, it didn't happen. So like there's
yeah.
no literalism about that. So like
Right.
you can reinterpret it as like, oh, it happened but in our souls or whatever, and that's fine. But like like, and I'm all for that, but like he again, emptied of all the omni qualities of an omni God, did not have perfect knowledge and everything. And I think like part of that was like having to revise teaching, so that like if you decide that the what he meant by the kingdom is going to come in glory, or I'm going to come in glory and establish my kingdom on earth, before this generation passes away. If you decide that means something different, then you're having to reinterpret some kind of a revelation from God. And like that's like got to be okay, because otherwise you just have to throw your faith away because it didn't happen. You would think like a lot of
Right.
people, even nowadays, who predict the ending of the world or this coming glory, would have to just like ditch their faith. They never do. Why? Because they just
Yeah.
reinterpret it. They either pick another date
Yeah.
or they just like reinterpret what was meant by it. And so and this is like what we're doing to some degree, except the principle has to be like uh love. Does it establish love? is it
Yeah.
is it is it more loving? Does it teach me something? So like what however I interpret Jesus saying that, it has to be according to this principle of what underlies all of his message, which is love. So that if I actually read all the Gospels and read what Paul said about Jesus, I understand that his ministry was a ministry of love, and that that's the principle that I need to try to understand whatever there is that
Yeah.
is said. So
Yeah. I remember. I think I was listening to Ehrman on a podcast, and he's talking about where Jesus taught about selling your possessions and giving to the poor. Well, if you sell your possessions, give to the poor, you're going to be poor also. And he was just saying that Jesus was apocalyptic. Like he thought the end is going to come next week.
that's right.
So why have all this stuff? Just give it away.
Yeah, yeah,
Paul is like, why are you getting married? Jesus is coming next Tuesday. Don't get
yeah, yeah.
married.
Right.
And so it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to reevaluate. Well, should I give away everything and everyone's going to be poor?
That's
Like
right.
you just kind of have to reevaluate how you're going to. But I think you could take the principle of like, regard others as more important than yourselves, not your own interest, but the interest of others. I think that's a very good principle in being concerned about someone else's difficulties, and if you're able to help, you should help. That's
That's right.
very very Christianity 101, I think. But
Yeah, yeah. And it's
yeah,
funny, like people think about interpretation as cafeteria style, like picking and choosing. Well, obviously, and especially, and mostly the people who call other people cafeteria style pickers and choosers are the worst about it. They're the most,
yeah,
they're the ones who siphon out the things, especially like this whole ministry to the least and the
oh
weakness.
yeah.
That's the thing that they ignore completely as soon as they
I
can. So
mean,
like, yeah,
Matthew 25. Matthew. I mean, that's like when I read it as like more of a literalist. I'm like, oh my gosh. I better help the poor as much as I can. But then I'm like, I could do so much more.
Ooh, but then it's
I can,
works
you know,
righteousness. Now you fall
then
into
it's
works
works
righteousness.
righteousness, right? And it's just,
That's right.
and even like the concept of hell. Like I think if you talk to a lot of people that believe in eternal conscious torment, their actions don't reflect that. And I think deep down, they would say, like, oh, my grandmother passed away, and then like in a Bible study or whatever, they said, well, you know did she know Jesus? And sometimes it's, well, she knew Jesus in her own way, kind of thing. And so
I'm sure she got
I,
in.
I think, yeah. So if you really, really did believe it, like I think you would
Yeah.
just be proclaiming it. And I kind of respect the street preachers a little bit. At least they're consistent
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they see that anxiousness of like needing to tell somebody.
yeah. Well, they're also
And
often mentally ill, but besides that, like it's like really, yeah, it's consistent. Like it would
yeah,
be, if you are that consistent, like yeah, that's a kind of psychosis. Often called religious psychosis. That level of certainty, yeah, you would be just
yeah,
on a street corner, drive-by baptisms, whatever you had to do to get people saved or whatever. The Mormons invented kind of an interesting way out, which is just like you can have people who died not believing in Christ. You can have them baptized like in their name or whatever. That's like a nice like innovation, I suppose.
yeah,
But the other
yeah,
one, the other one that always gets me is when you go to a funeral of somebody who was like not at all a Christian, but their like family was or whatever. And then the preacher's always like, if so and so were here today, they'd want you to know that, about Jesus or whatever. Like, oh, would they? I'm just like, this is such a goofy game we have to play.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. And yeah. I mean, it's still real to me. Like it's still ingrained in my head,
Yeah.
wired. So I still have a reverence and fear of God,
Yeah.
and I still have a kind of a total depravity mindset a little bit in my own mind, how we're capable of doing really evil
Yeah.
things and
Hmm.
justifying evil things. And I think we kind of see this in real time in the political uh,
Yeah.
realm of things, like, which I'm surprised that, like, just if we want to get political, but like you see immigrants being rounded up without due process. And I thought, no way. Like I thought 10 years ago, no way we would
Yeah.
accept this. Like as
Yeah.
long as it's okay, if it's done in due process, if you have more, like they're treated, humanely. But like now people are rationalizing that. And it's just, I guess maybe it shouldn't have surprised me, but it kind of confirms, maybe we are kind of totally depraved in in a lot of ways. But yeah, that's kind of the dichotomy. Like I think in the Bible, it's like we are kind of totally depraved, but we're also we have some a goodness to us. We're made in the image of God. That's kind of like there's no univocal
Nice.
voice
Yeah.
with that too.
Perfect. Perfectly
So
said. I mean,
yeah,
I think that's the proper use of the history of our theology. So, total depravity has a history. We can trace it.
yeah,
And it was certainly, not original to Judaism or anything like that. Like that was not in Judaism. Like that was
yeah,
something that was developed over time. And I think that there are times when it's appropriate, actually, to talk about and describe actual evil. And we still need a language for that, but we have to. It's so difficult because so much of that theology is so bound up with so much other BS that like it's hard to free it from from that. And then like, because I mean, it's something that was used to like basically scare people,
yeah,
or whatever. And then, one of the most important things that's talked about, throughout Ehrman's book, has been something that I've thought about my whole life, is like, if you're just scaring people into it, like, then it just becomes this mercenary transactional thing to where, and he talks
Yeah.
about this a lot in the beginning of the book, like people's fear of death is quite natural. He takes it all the way back, at least to, like the Sumerian origins, the Mesopotamian, uh, Gilgamesh epic. And
Hmm.
fear of death has been, important part of human history, let's just say.
Yeah.
And it can
Yeah.
be exploited, and can be turned into some sort of economic. I do this so that I don't have to like be afraid or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
or I can reduce my anxiety about it. This is to me. I don't know if Pete Enns invented the phrase sin of certainty, but this
Yeah.
is to me the sin of certainty. It's like I do this transactional economic thing so that I can, and Protestants were great at pointing it out when it was indulgences, but not so great at pointing it out when it's, the 4 points of whatever is just one
Yeah.
more transaction that I transact with God in order to, become saved or whatever. So as long as it's like tit for tat, I do this, you give me that, it's totally
Yeah.
vitiated by the economics of the whole thing.
Right.
And it's an
Yeah.
exploitation of fear.
It's funny if you ask someone like, if would you choose to follow Jesus if you knew for certain, so to speak, that this is all there is. Like when we die, we die. Would you follow Jesus? And
Nice.
you know, and it is because like I think it's like why would you go to church? Why would you follow Jesus if he didn't save you from hell? And that's kind of like,
Yeah.
wow, how would Jesus feel about it? Like, I mean, and it's
Yeah.
interesting. The book of Acts. This was pointed out by a conservative pastor uh, early on in my spiritual life and as an adult. He said, like, nowhere in the book of Acts is heaven offered. It was
It's
always about repentance.
Yeah,
Thought
well,
that
and
was
except
interesting.
for, I mean, I think what's clearly on offer is love, like then and there.
Yeah,
Like it acts as like a straight communist community. Frankly, a lot of people would be scared to hear that, but like,
yeah,
like total. It's supposed to be ideally this community of love, ultimate. Like this is the way that we were meant to live with each other, and of course, like a lot of attempts at reproducing those kinds of communities, including Jim Jones's and David
hmm,
Koresh's and all of them, have not gone so well, like throughout history too.
no,
Like, but like
hmm,
the higher the ideal, sometimes the farther the fall. But like the
yeah,
ideal is still important. Is that what's on offer is like, love now, not like later.
yeah,
And so it's not for yeah, it's not for it's you're not transacting, your afterlife. You're living
yeah,
this life. And to me there is a really big and important distinction. If your ministry and your teaching and your understanding of the Bible and your Christianity is just, I mean, there are churches, as you know, they call themselves oftentimes now denominational, but they're, others as well. Their only theology, they only preach one thing, the altar call, like getting saved,
yeah,
accepting Jesus. That's it. And that's every sermon, every
yeah,
Sunday.
yeah,
Nothing to do with anything else. Again, they don't read the Bible. They read like, I don't know, like three or four
yeah,
of the same proof texts, including that
right,
Paul and including that
right,
John, I'm the way, the truth, and life. They
yeah,
read those I mean, can you imagine going to church and that's all you do and that's all you
yeah,
care about? It's just like unbelievable. There's nothing to do with the
yeah.
gospel of love that Jesus preached.
I can remember in college, and I was gun ho evangelism, right? And we were like in a leaders meeting, and one girl who was Catholic, she was actually practicing Catholic, and which is abnormal, basically, to be part of Campus Crusade. And and she mentioned she had an idea. Said, "Why don't we just do some good works, like go volunteer somewhere?"
Ah, Catholic.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, this is like I've had a lot of cringy moments in my life, and this was one of them. I remember I just rolled
Me
my
too.
eyes. I
Yeah.
rolled my eyes, and I just said,
Uh,
"It's
Catholic.
about the gospel. It's about preaching. You're going to hell. sharing
Right.
the 4 points of laws, like that's the most important thing. Forget about volunteer. That's a waste of time. And
Uh,
then I developed a habit of reading through the Bible every year. And I'm like, and I'm stubborn. It takes multiple readings, at least for me, to like, oh, wait a second. There's a lot, especially you just read the New Testament or even the Old Testament. It just talks so much about just even like leaving certain parts of your land unharvested so the
yeah,
poor and the
Jubilees.
foreigner
Yeah.
can eat. Yeah, Jubilee. I mean, geez, you want to
Well, that's in
offend Jesus?
Leviticus too. Yeah. Right.
Leviticus, Jesus' first sermon, he referenced Jubilee. And talk about a Marxist or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's pretty radical to
Yeah.
return. Maybe we should return this land to the Native Americans. Aren't we a Christian nation? Shouldn't we? You know. Um, but yeah, it's just like you said, like read the Bible honestly, just in good faith, just like what is it saying? And a lot of times you won't know what it's saying. And
Yeah,
a
which
lot of
is
times,
fair because it's from an ancient culture,
yeah.
which a lot, yeah,
Oh
like,
yeah.
and so you need help, like
Yeah.
understanding what the heck they're talking about, even though
And
you have
and
some like cool new modern translation. It
yeah.
doesn't matter. It's like weird
And
language. It's like
people and
concepts are
people have
weird.
people have stuck their hands in it. Like I just finished reading Isaiah. And I think I read in some of the introductions, like there's like three or four different Isaiahs in like
Yeah,
one Isaiah book
right.
because there's different streams of thinking and
Yeah,
like very complicated. My point is like it's not clear all the time. It's and for me, like Jesus said, um, when it comes down to it, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And your neighbor being the Samaritan, someone that's not like you. Your neighbor is being your enemy, and that's kind of my one of my life verses, I guess.
yeah. I think the important thing is I mean, and it's hard because it doesn't feel like it even when you're doing it a lot of times because loving the enemy is very hard.
Oh,
But like
yeah,
Jesus is saying, like if you, to me at any rate, like the way I interpret his mission and everything, like, if you want to enter the kingdom of God, you can do it right now, and here's how. It's just like it's not what you think.
yeah,
It requires like this incredible self-sacrificial act of love, but you can do it like at any moment. Like you can be there now. I was always impressed by, you gave the example of people who are trafficked or whatever, but there's so many people. That's an obvious example, but there's so many people really who are in hell now. Like they don't need to like be sent there or wait
yeah,
to go there. And there's a certain sense of eternity about it when you're in it. That's for sure. Like it does feel like forever when you're in it. And when you get taken out, like it's through an act of love, generally speaking. And that can be, something very basic and bodily, like removing a person from that situation and helping them get a life or whatever. Or it can be something, spiritual, like an act of love where, this person is, you know, appreciated or told that, they're, um, more options for their lives than what they're seeing right now, and then
hmm
I'm going to help you to do that or whatever, like, which are all a risk. It's such a risk to help somebody in need, because they're different than you. They also, and you can't give them everything they need, and all kinds
yeah,
of there's so much risk to you and to them involved in all of it. But it seems to me that, like, if we're going to interpret the Bible according to the way Jesus interpreted scriptures himself, which it's based on this idea of love. And Amy Jill Levine is this great Jewish scholar of the New Testament who makes the point that most of what Jesus was teaching is stuff that was in Jewish tradition as a part of the conversation already, and that was an option that was within Judaism. There's a famous kind of like movement within Pharisaic Judaism, like Rabbi Bethel, the greater at the time, was preaching those kinds of teachings as well. And
hmm
and Jesus, was a part of that tradition. And when he was talking to Pharisees, and they were interpreting this very legalistic way or whatever, and he had this more open way of interpreting the law. So like when Jesus says, I intended to keep every jot and tittle, Ehrman has got a certain take on that, Bart Ehrman, where, he says like, no, he meant that he was a kind of Pharisaic Jew in that regard. I just can't help but hear him being a part of this Pharisaic conversation where he's saying, like, in order to keep every jot and tittle, we are, keeping this law, but it's the law of love. So that when we talk about Sabbath, for example, and people are accusing Jesus's followers, pointing out that they're harvesting grain or something weird like that on the Sabbath, whatever they were doing, that was like technically not, according to the law. And Jesus says, no, they are keeping the law, because the Sabbath wasn't made. Or men weren't made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath for man, or
Yeah.
whatever, however that gets
Yeah.
translated. This is this kind of turnaround that was in the air at the time, where, yeah, I'm here to keep the law. I'm gonna keep the law, and here's how I'm gonna do it. And it's very much in line to me with Paul's idea that, like, hey, you can do all these cool things, you can speak in tongues, and he said you could have even faith that moves mountains, and you can do all these great things. You can like fast and like bodily mortification of the
Hmm.
body, and you can keep every law you want. But if you don't have love, you don't have
Yeah.
you're nothing. You have nothing. You have nothing. You have nothing. And so it's just kind of an interesting, I don't know, way of taking all of Scripture for me is like
Yeah.
this. And Paul was a Pharisee, so like, he didn't think of himself as becoming other than a Pharisee. He thought of himself as being like carrying the Pharisaic message to its maximal place,
Hmm.
which was
Hmm.
like these laws were to make you more loving, and when they don't, then they're nothing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, did you have something else you wanted to do as we wrap up here? Do you see anything on your notes there that we didn't cover that you wanted to
Oh,
get in here
there's a
at the
bunch of
end?
things.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of things, but I think maybe a part two is in
Oh,
order.
part two sounds good. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course, I'm down
Yeah.
for that. Well,
Yeah.
Kevin, thank you for doing this with me. This is always fun. We've been doing this together for a long time, so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's good to get it down. And yeah, I look forward to the next time.
Awesome. We'll see you then.